Good morning. This is George Parsons with Big Top Leadership. Today we're going to continue our discussion on behavioral profiles and behavioral styles. If you remember from the last video, we talked about how people had two strands of behavior. They had priorities that were either task focused or people focused, and they had pace that were either faster paced or slower paced. And at the end of the last discussion, we talked about how that the pace would be on the y-axis, running vertically up and down with faster paced at the top, slower paced at the bottom. And then we talked about how priority would be on the x-axis, running from left to right with task-oriented people on the left and people-oriented on the right. And then we said we would talk about behavioral styles. So if you look at each one of those quadrants, talking about the upper left quadrant first, we will put a D in there for driving. Then we will put in the quadrant to the right of it an I for influencing. Below it, in the lower right-hand quadrant, we will put an S for supportive. And then in the lower left-hand quadrant, we will put a C for conscientious. Those are the four main profiles that come out of a DISC behavior. Now, nobody is going to have just one profile, more than likely. That is a very unusual profile just to have one of those. You will have one main, and then you will have one or two secondary behavior traits. What we're going to talk about today is the driving trait, or the D. So, as we talk about these D-style people that are task-oriented and faster paced, the phrase you will tend to hear for a person that has a strong D behavior is they're very determined, they're very directive, they know what they want, they know when they want to get it done. So what are 7 prominent traits of that D behavior? Well, one is they tend to have a very high level of self-confidence. They're self-assured, and they're going to show that. One of the other traits that you're going to see with a D is they're courageous. They live to dare. They're not afraid to take a risk. Next, with the D behavior, you're going to find that they're very results oriented and they're ambitious. Those are the type of people that you'll see in school or at work that know what they want, they're going to drive to get it done, and they're going to have high goals. Another trait with the D is you're going to find they're commanding. If you're in a team with a D, they're the person that's going to want to take the lead. They want to be in the lead. A D behavior is also very competitive. They're going to assert themselves in that team. Their goal is to win. They do not like to lose. These are also very good at being change agents. They're comfortable with change. They like to do things different. They like to push themselves out there and be in front and get things done. So if you're in a situation where you need a change agent, that D behavior is very important. Lastly, when a D communicates, they're going to be direct, they're going to be straightforward, and they're going to be to the point. So you're always going to know where you stand with that D type behavior. Now, like everyone, a D will go under stress. And it's important to understand how that person is going to behave under stress. But first, when you think about that D personality, and as we talk about blended personalities in later videos, it could be somebody that their primary behavioral style is a D. Their greatest fear in life is being taken advantage of by other people. They do not like that feeling of being taken advantage of. Secondly, they hate losing control. D's want to be in control of the situations they're working on and involved in. And that's an area that, as stress increases, can be an area of conflict. So, as we look at that D behavior and we talk about them under stress, what are indicators as you're communicating with a D type behavior, or you live with a D type behavior as your spouse or one of your children? What are you going to see? The first thing is they're going to overuse impatience. Impatience can be a valuable trait. It helps you get things done. But for that D behavior, when they get stressed, they're going to be impatient with everything, and they're going to show that. They want it right now. The other thing they're going to do is they're going to become even more blunt in their communication style. And depending on the person they're talking to and their behavioral styles, that bluntness can be stinging. And so when you see that person that has that D behavior and their communication is becoming very blunt and hurtful, and they're saying things without thinking, they're under stress. They can be under stress, very high strung. They just cannot let go. They must keep working. They drive themselves almost to the point of exhaustion, and they have a very difficult time relaxing. It's just hard for them to sit down and take it easy. And lastly, when a D is under stress, if they're challenged in a team meeting, even in a family situation where somebody stands up and challenges them, they're going to react very strongly to that. They're going to come right back at it, and they're not afraid to debate. They're not afraid to argue. So they are going to come straight at that challenge. Now, as you work through this, how do you determine if you're a D? Well, one of the things we do with consultants like me is we have tools to help you take tests that will determine what your behavioral style is. And what I would recommend is that you contact Big Top Leadership or another group, and they help you work through determining what your behavioral style is, because again, it's going to be blended. But let's talk about, if you are wondering, do you have some D behavior? Well, what would be things that would indicate that? Well, do you make quick decisions? If an issue comes up, a problem comes up, you're doing something, can you make that decision very quickly, sometimes even on intuition, that you don't wait for the facts? Are you typically the type of person that when you start something, you finish it? You don't let things lay around for a long period of time. Any kind of project, where it's at home, at work, when you start it, you finish it. When you are working on something, you have confidence in your skills. Again, it's all about confidence. You believe you can do what needs to be done. When you're communicating, you're going to get right to the point. You don't like small talk. Are you the type of person that if somebody tries to make small talk, especially someone you know, that your response would be, can we just get to the point of what we need to talk about? You do like to set goals, and you will work to achieve them. That's one of the great things about D's. They're not going to let other things get in their way. When they set a goal, they are going to get it accomplished. One thing you're going to see with that high D is much more interested in getting the job done than making people like them. Have you ever heard that? Boy, this person can get stuff done, but they leave a lot of people behind them that are really upset with what they did. That is a D behavior. You enjoy leading projects. You like to be that leader. You want to be that person in control. And if you're not challenged in work, anything you're doing at home, then you're going to get bored with that. When you are working a job, you want the freedom to do it the way you want to do it. You don't want somebody standing over you and micromanaging you. If you have that D behavior and you have a micromanager, that is going to create a lot of stress for you. Now, if you are a person that when you get under stress and somebody puts pressure on you, are you someone that tends to get aggressive but determined to get it done or show them that you can do it? I'm going to show those teachers I can get this done. I'm going to show my boss that I can get this done. That D behavior, are you someone that just, you have a low tolerance level for feelings and opinions of others? You want facts. You want it to be solid. It's a task. It has facts attached. It's not about feelings. It's not about opinions. That's a strong D behavior. When you can work on a problem, something comes up, you get energized. You love to solve problems. You want to be that person out in the lead doing what you got to do to get it done. You don't like to get mired in details. If somebody comes up and tries to explain something to you, whether it's someone at work or a child at home, and they start talking about all the details of what's going on, it's hard for you to stay engaged. It's hard for you to pay attention. Details just do not matter as much. Other people tend to see you as cool and aloof because you don't come across with those feelings. You don't come across as empathetic. You come across as, let's get the problem solved. Lastly, again, you love to compete, but you hate to lose. You love the thought of competing in the game, but the thought of losing really bothers you. And that can be a difficult issue. Now, as we move forward, unless you've got children at home, the last of this video may not matter to you if why you're looking at this is for work. But I also do work with families or schools. And with each one of these styles, we're going to talk through what it's like to have a child of that particular behavior. And then we'll talk about what it's like to have parents of one behavior and children of another. If you have a D child at home, some of those traits we talked about, you can see that in your child. You can see it in your 8-year-old. You can see it in your 12-year-old. You may even see it in your 3-year-old. How do you deal with that D-type behavior in that child? Well, first of all, the important things with that child is provide them with responsibility. Let them have choices. A great example that I use with this is if you've got that high D child, when they are getting dressed, they always want to pick their clothes. They'll always say, let me pick, let me pick. Well, the way you control that is you pick 3 outfits out and then say, okay, you choose from these 3. You have set guidelines that keeps them within boundaries to eliminate potential issues. The other thing is with this type of child is you got to give them goals. You got to give them things that they can accomplish so they can show that they can get things done. Now, one of the difficult things you're going to find with this D-type child is they don't deal with failure or loss well. As we talked about, they're very competitive. So they're not going to deal with this. And one of the things you're going to have to do as a parent is flex and help them understand that failure is a part of life. You're also going to have to help them learn to slow down and relax, because they're going to be like the adult. They're going to want to go from the time they get up until the time they fall over to go to bed. The other thing you've got to do with them is you need to set clear boundaries. They're always going to be challenging the rules. They want to be in control, but they're a child. They can't be. So what you do is you make clear boundaries up and you work with them so that they understand what those boundaries are and what the consequences will be if they go outside of those boundaries. The other thing with this type of child is to make them the type of adult they need to be with this D behavior. You need to work on teaching them compassion and understanding of others, because it's not going to be natural for them. So that's something that parents are going to have to help them with. Now, when you're communicating with that D child, especially when they need to be doing something, you use brief commands. Go clean your room. Go to bed. Don't give them long commands with lots of details, because you're going to lose them. They're going to react to that person in charge that gives them quick, brief commands. Now, the other thing you're going to have to do with this D child is you've got to give them a lot of opportunities for activities and exercise, because they're going to go from the time they get up till the time they go to bed, as I said before. So you're going to have to let them use that energy. They are not the type of child you can sit in a room and say, go read a book or go watch TV, because they're going to get bored with that and they're going to begin to do things you don't want them to. Then lastly, and this is important for parents if you're a different behavioral style, and again, we'll talk about this later, but that D behavior child wants to be in control. They want to lead. It doesn't matter what age they are. So you cannot let yourself get into a power struggle with them. You cannot negotiate with them, because they will see negotiation as a weakness. So it is important that they always understand ultimately you're the leader, you're the one in control, or they're going to be a constant challenge when issues arise. Now, tomorrow we're going to talk about the next behavioral style, the I behavioral style, which is someone that is people-oriented but fast-paced. Thank you for listening today, and you can find further information on our website at bigtopleadership.com.